You. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the first session of Film and Forensic workshop towards a documentary practice. In the age of social media, where content is distributed algorithmically with attention to political or psychological biases, we are immersed in the landscape of post-truth. In this paradigm, the testimonies of witnesses and victims can be easily dismissed as false or subjective, channeling the credibility of journalistic, judicial, or investigative work. Distrust in witnesses who hold differing political views poses are a significant threat to the construction of democratic institutions. Critically engaging with the contemporary world requires a transformation in our toolboxes for activism and documentation. As a response to the complexities of the post-truth megasphere, we need rigorous proximity to victims and familiarity with scientific knowledge, understanding the powerful role that visualization can play in community building and public advocacy during these times. These workshops moves away from the traditional ethics of testimony and employs various documentary techniques to directly approach violation against humans or nature. The goals of the workshop is to develop an understanding of evidentiary technique such as image analysis, geolocation, OSINT, open source intelligence, and data mining, exploring ways to utilize these tools in investigative film facts. We will engage with non-optical movies image making technologies like AI videos, voiceovers, and found footage, with the final goal of collaborating in groups to produce a vertical film lasting 3 to 15 minutes. The workshop will consist of 4 sessions, with the final class held 3 weeks after the third session, so the group of participants have time to prepare and complete their films. Our instructor, Manuel Correa, is a Colombian artist and filmmaker based in Madrid. His work explores memory and post-conflict reconstruction in contemporary societies. Manuel's work is exemplified by the difficult task of negotiating highly complex and fragile social relations formed in the aftermath of trauma. He has used documentary filmmaking as a tool through which to bring people together, creating meeting points for war victims, survivors, activists, and scientists. Correa has a MA in Research Architecture from Goldsmiths College, University of London. He has part of the Forensic Architecture project. His works have been presented in venues such as Spanish Pavilion at the 18th Venice Architecture Biennale, Kunsthaus Graz, Rotterdam International Film Festival, Museu Tamayo in Mexico, Presentation House Gallery in Canada, Media Lab Metadero, the Medellin Museu of Modern Art, the 80 Norwegian Sculpture Biennale, Museu de la Memoria y de los Derechos Humanos in Chile, eFlux Architecture, Doc Leipzig International Documentary Film Festival, among other spaces. Manuel, it's all new.
Thank you so much for the kind introduction, and very much, looking forward to this workshop and session. This is, I intend this to be a very hands-on and a very, hopefully, provocative seminar, workshop with all of you. So I think before we really start getting into it, I think for me it would be very important to know a little bit about you, and if you could very shortly summarize why are you, like, what brings you to filmmaking, or what is your interest in filmmaking, so that, in the further sessions I can tone things, and direct things to what your interests are. So I wonder if we can do it in order that you can present, like, make it very short, like 1 minute or so that we can get to know you. And I don't know if you already know each other. Let me see what is the best way to do this. Yeah, I think let's do
We
it through this
can
list.
raise hands.
Yes. Who wants to go first? So I guess maybe we'll assign people. Andrei Arpad, would you like to go first? We'll do it alphabetically.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I haven't eaten, so I'm a bit on low sugar, so may I have to collect my thoughts quickly. So I'm a trained architect. I'm in the process of obtaining the very last credits of my master's at ETH Zurich. And I have a background in music, so I've been making electronic experimental music for like 10 years. And in the past years, I've been really trying to kind of expand in a way like my thinking and searching into various different disciplines. And I think I'm interested in creating a practice that is in between art, in between technology. So yeah, I'm working with a bit maybe too many mediums at the moment. And I've been always making films, also throughout the architecture studies, been making kind of films, but I guess like, yeah, I'm just excited in seeing where this class brings me, and to collaborate with others as well. So
This is amazing. Yeah, no, and for everybody, take notice. He's an architect and he does music, so it's really useful for your films. if you are collaborating, I mean, you will know a little bit more about this later. So it's amazing. Nice to meet you, Andre. Antonio, Federico.
Hello, I'm Antonio. I'm from Brazil originally, but now I live in Italy. I'm also an architect, actually, but I do not make music. And in my master's dissertation, I did it in Portugal, in Universidade do Porto, and I was interested in the intersection between dance and architecture through the idea of chance. So how can architecture deal with unpredictability? And yeah, I mean, I'm mostly curious. I have some experience making like short films, but like very amateur stuff maybe. So yeah, I'm super glad to be taking this class and maybe learning something.
Amazing. That's great, Antonio. Nice to meet you. Who's next? Kalak Nogueira. I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name. Yeah, I don't know if
No,
you-
it's totally correct. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. So, hi everyone. My name is Kalak or Kalak. I'm from Brazil too, but I live in Seattle, the United States. I'm doing a PhD in cinema and media studies. My background is in film. I did some work in found footage, some films in found footage, and I was interested in experimenting with other kinds of techniques to make films. So that's pretty much the reason I'm here. It's actually the first course I'm taking here at the new center. So yeah,
Amazing.
should be fun.
Very nice to meet you, and I'm looking forward, to creating a space where you can experiment new stuff, which is what we're all in for. Elena Parpinello, you go next.
Hi. So I'm Elena. Well, I'm mostly like a millennial proselyte of the gaming age, and I work with speculative design and design fiction quite a lot, and I just graduated from geo design at the Design Academy Eindhoven. So my tutors were Meta Haven, so I guess like in the last 2 years I worked quite a lot with moving image. And specifically right now I'm focusing on a project that um aims to kind of like deconstruct synthetic imagery generated with AI, and how like it generates narratives that are spread like virally, and what does this entail. So I guess that I'm here because moving image for me right now, it's like sort of design by research method, and I'm curious to see where it goes.
Well, that's amazing. That's a really interesting background that you have, and I hope that you find this productive, and hopefully we'll be taking things from a very sort of like community human rights perspective, but also kind of challenging that, which is kind of the where we will be moving, with the project.
Yeah.
Very nice to meet you.
Thank you. Nice to meet you.
Georgia Horgan, are you here?
I'm here. Hello. Can you hear me okay?
Hello. Yes. Nice to meet you.
Good. So my name's Georgia. I'm from London in the UK originally, but I am based in Mexico City. I'm an artist, and I work with film, and I'm really excited to take this class because what I mostly look at in my work is how the idea of historical fact is constructed. So I use a mixture of documentary and like fictional modes, I suppose, with the objective of trying to think about how like we could construct an idea of like feminist storytelling and what that would look like if we could assume that the narratives that we look at the moment are mostly written from like a patriarchal perspective, I guess.
Well, that's amazing. It sounds, it's really timely and very important, to deal with these issues right now, especially given what is starting to happen, with social media everywhere, and with this huge backlash that we're seeing right now. Well, likely very nice to meet you. We have Giulio Gonella.
Yes. Hi, everyone. Hi. So I'm an Italian architect, and I'm currently a PhD in architecture in Turin, Italy. And I guess what drives me to this workshop is that I'm trying to approach film as a way of research, maybe similar to some of the things that have been said so far. I'm working currently on a project in a region of Indonesia, which is North Sumatra, and I'm working with a filmmaker on issues of neo/post-colonial ecologies, this sort of idea of how plantations and the humans are sort of shaping each other, and how human rights violations and sort of plantation expansions is going along in the country. So it sort of felt like something really akin to what I'm currently looking at. This workshop. So I'm looking forward to explore film more as a medium, and because it's something that I'm really for the moment kind of behind, but hopefully getting in contact with people that are more trained into that will be helpful for me to get into it more.
Well, that's phenomenal. Yes. This is definitely a space for this, and I'm very happy to meet you. Very diverse backgrounds, but I think, overall we'll make really good teams from what I'm saying. So I'm really excited to see how this starts, coming together. Very nice to meet you, Julio.
Likewise.
And after you, we have Ilinka.
Yes, hello. Can you hear me?
Yes.
So I'm Ilinka, and I'm studying in the critical philosophy program here at the New Center. I'm studying in the class of Hito Stahl at the Academy of Fine Arts, and about to finish and work on my diploma, which is the reason I'm here. And at the same time, I'm working in curatorial studies and currently working in a cultural institution. And a new project that is coming up now that is really at the forefront of my work is the opportunity to work with the private archive of Harun Farocki, And what I'm specifically interested in there is this terminology of the operational image. I also have a background in media theory and actually photographic theory, but haven't gotten too close to moving image. So I'm really excited for the workshop.
Wow, that's amazing. Well, very nice to meet you, Linka. I'm looking forward to this seminar. Yeah, I'm very excited. This is really good. As always, this is what I like teaching so much. This is why I like teaching in the new center so much, because generally the cohorts are quite phenomenal. So it's, yeah, I'm excited for this. So Jeremy, you're next.
Hello, I'm Jeremy. I'm based in Berlin, just of recent. I grew up in Los Angeles and have lived in Austin, Texas for the last 9 years. And I'm interested in filmmaking and journalism. That's what I do. I think primarily as a tool of studying displacement and segregation. I came to Berlin recently to kind of study my family history of being displaced from Germany through the Holocaust, and I'm working on films that are kind of looking at how cities are changing and kind of not prioritizing arts and cultural spaces and spaces for minorities and artists to gather, and how documentaries can be a tool to share stories about less about these spaces from the outside, but what happens on the inside, as a way of facilitating maybe empathy and maybe more so solidarity. And right now, it's honestly been a very difficult time for me because a lot of my neighborhood in Los Angeles recently burned down, and I think this class is coming at an interesting time for me to try to, like, yeah, tell a story about that displacement. It was just weird how I came to Berlin wanting to study displacement, and now so much of my community has been displaced, and I feel very motivated to try to tell some kind of story using these tools related around to that. So yeah.
I'm very sorry to hear, Jeremy, about your community, and I yeah, hope that everything winds up, being all right for people, that people are hopefully safe. It must be very distressful. So
Thank you.
Lais Franza. I'm definitely mispronouncing your name. Would you?
No, you
correct me?
said it perfectly. Yeah, Laís. França, yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. I'm Laís. I'm Brazilian, currently based in Rio. I'm a visual artist and researcher. My master is actually in geography, and I have a background from my early academic path in economics as well. But I've also worked with content analysis and programming with film and series. So I've been kind of connected to this universe for 10 years now. And I've also helped friends produce short videos in the past. My partner is a scenographer, set designer, so we work together at times. And I played myself a little bit with some footage and moving images, but my practice is mostly related to sculpture, installations, and material transformation. Usually thematically, it's related to landscape and public space, migration. There's some sort of relationship between body and territory and the fictional or speculative possibilities. And I've always thought that it would be interesting for me exploring more with filmmaking and these possibilities of fragments or research as well. I think it was previously mentioned, and incorporating installations, for example. And perhaps this workshop would be an interesting opportunity.
Definitely. I mean, very nice to meet you, Lais, and looking forward to interacting more with. Now, the next person is Lina or Lena.
Yeah.
How do I pronounce it? Sorry.
Lena's fine. Hi, everyone. Hi to those I've met before. I'm Lena. I'm from Berlin originally, but I live in the UK. I'm formally trained in philosophy, and at the moment I'm quite obsessed with time machines, the concept of time machines, time machine as practice as well. And I'm basically analyzing everything as a time machine. Same goes for film. I'm currently working on 2 long-term documentaries. The nice thing about long-term documentaries is they kind of follow you for a long time and you don't really have to think about when you're going to finish them, what the end point kind of is. So yeah, that's what I'm currently doing in terms of film.
Yeah, sometimes I have a project that I've been working on for 7 years, and sometimes I think that I want to finish the project before the project finishes me. It's, it's one or the other, at this point, when you cross the 7-year mark. Yeah, very nice to meet you, Lina. Hopefully we'll finish all these projects at some point. Now we go for Marina.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. I'm currently based in Georgia, Tbilisi. I'm a new media artist. I'm working with AI stuff and video games. And in my practice, I'm interested in propaganda views, especially in the Russian context where I came from. But also like propaganda in conjunction with neurophenomenology and psyops and stuff like this. And I have a background in documentary photography, but it was like ages ago. So yeah, I think I would like to start incorporating the documentary part like to my practice. That's all. Thank you.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Marina, and looking forward. Very nice to meet you. And we have now Miki, or Mike. How do I say it? Sorry, again.
Oh, it's pronounced Mickey. Hello. I'm a visual artist. I'm right now working on a project that's like a social practice work. So it's inspired by like Joseph Boy's idea of social sculpture, and it's also I see it as like a sort of physical response to Mark Fisher's Acid Communism text, and also the situationist idea of psychogeography, because it's going to involve sort of propagandizing the importance of nourishing psychogeographies. And yeah, I'm just kind of like focusing on this like kind of this new direction. It's like a departure away from my past as a gallery artist. With my art dealer got shuttered during COVID. And I've kind of taken a bit of a foray into documentary in the past, with something super like lo-fi, and it was on security cameras, and like half of the theater walked out of it halfway through, but then the people that stayed said they really got something out of it. So, yeah. Nice to meet you all. Everyone sounds so interesting. I can't wait to chat more.
Nice to meet you, Miki, and looking forward. We have Nadia. Nadia's AI note taker. Sounds like that's an IA. So then we go Peggy Bloomer.
Hi. So
Peggy.
I took a class with you before.
Yes, I remember you. Amazing.
Okay. And I actually use that in a class. So I'm a university professor. I teach graphic design. I have a PhD from EGS in communication and media, which means I've read a lot of philosophy, which I don't always remember well and struggle with. And I am a BD in a degree in British literature, which is really different from everybody else who's here. I don't actually do film. I do teach it occasionally, and I use your idea of documentation in a class I did last semester. I think my students may have hated me by the end of the class. Get some good projects out. I'm really, really excited about that article we had to read today about the idea of scale and digital objects and the interaction of culture with technology, which I think is going to be my final project, what I'm going to write about for finishing this certificate. I've taken a lot of classes now on Simadone, and I'm really hoping to write about the technical object. And I found a piece about the existence of the digital object that I'm hoping to put together with some biological images. So why am I here? I'm not sure, but I'm looking forward to it.
Phenomenal. Well, very nice to see you again, Peggy. Yes, I remember you from 2 years ago or so, I think, or last year, perhaps. Very nice. So very nice to see you. Now we have Pradeep Singh.
Hi. Like most of the people have told, I am also a designer, based in India, Noida currently, and I'm still kind of trying or attempting to find what I'm really driven by. I mean, I had like a set of plans earlier a couple of months back, and then there was let's say a rupture in my sort of narrative of who I am, and sort of I'm just figuring that out as of now. And but recently I got introduced in this book called Atmospheres of Breathing, and that has sort of interested me. So perhaps I'm just giving that is an inclination that I could be sure about as of now, and perhaps that could sort of channelize in this workshop. Thank you.
Amazing. Very nice to meet you, Pradeep. And I'm sure that we'll have a lot of things to talk about. We have the next person is TY.
Yeah,
Or
yeah, but Kai, it would be
Kai.
Never worked in Spanish that well. I'm American. I live in Spain, however, and historically I was a documentary filmmaker, and I worked a lot in archival filmmaking, and I came across this course, and it seemed like it would be an interesting way to learn about some new techniques that might spark some interest in some other projects. So I think I like the idea of trying to use different footage sources and different materials to triangulate some sense of objective truth. So that seemed interesting to me. So rolling the dice, and we'll see how this goes.
Phenomenal. Well, very nice to meet you, and I'm sure that it's gonna go interesting, especially with this crew of people. That is amazing. And we have the very last person, which is Valera.
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Valeria Prorizna, and I'm originally from Mykolaiv, Ukraine, and now I'm based between Kiev, which is obviously capital of Ukraine, and Maastricht, Netherlands. So I was kind of forced into multidisciplinary field by war and Russian war crimes. So because it's hardly possible to find, I think, more multidisciplinary thing that can happen to person. And I worked most of my time for a couple of years with Center for Spatial Technologies, creative producer for Mariupol Drama Theater Spatial Archive, and short movie City Within a Building, which is about the Russian bombing of theater in the Ukrainian city of Mariupol. So we use situated testimony methodology, which I think some of you know, developed by our partners Forensic Architecture, to create 3D model of theater and place testimonies and memories of war crime into that model. And also important part of my work in general is collaboration with international organizations like activist courts, architects, or prosecutors. So just really, really long list of people, including obviously filmmakers, to expose Russia's strategies of terror, hold them accountable for them, but also not to lose focus on other stuff in Ukrainian culture, our architectural heritage that being destroyed, and not to reduce witnesses to war crime in the process, and also to manage to be this switch between those roles, like being witness and working with witness accounts. So I think that's why quite obvious why this workshop is grabbed my attention. I'm very
Well, this is
grateful to be there.
Valera. Yeah, I'm good friends with Maxim from the Center for Spatial Technologies, and I was actually at the opening or the first presentation of the work that you made in Copenhagen. So
Nice.
I was actually yeah, this is amazing. And right now I'm actually working with the Ukraine War Archive with the docusynthesis lab.
Yeah, that's
So
all good colleagues.
so it's quite phenomenal. Well, so without further ado, we'll get started. Because this is very hands-on, I think it makes sense that we jump into something that is very hands-on. And the way that that this program is structured around is that we will divide the class in groups of three. So there will be people divided by three, and these groups of three will make a film together. The film could be anywhere from 3 minutes to 15 minutes. And it is proposed that it is an investigative film that in terms of form, it should combine either things that are found and analyzed and or things that you film yourself. It could be with your cameras, with cell phones, or with audio recordings. So basically what I expect of, or what I think we should expect is that, you're all, mostly all of you are artists and with some journalists and some research and architects. So it makes sense that you push towards the creation of a work that fits inside of your practice, but at the same time, film is a collective endeavor. It's an endeavor that joins many people together, and that people work on projects together. So it makes sense in this particular case that we work as people work in teams. So we will sort this out. I think it depends also. If you guys know each other, I imagine some of you do from the new center, and some of you do not yet. So I think this is a right moment, to divide the teams. I think, for instance, it makes sense that that people who are architects, work together with people who have experience in film, and for example, graphic designers or designers work together with people from other fields. So I'm gonna propose some themes, if this is all right. So I think the first theme that I will propose is I will propose Andre, and I think Andre should work together with Liz, with Lais, sorry, and with give me 1 second, and with Nikki. So I think that's team one. So it's Andre, Mickey, and Lais. Then, and if anybody, if anybody has questions or objects things, and or has ideas that they want to work together with somebody, then let me know, and then we'll, on the chat, you can write it in the chat, and I'll be, I can do that. So the second team is Antonio, Kalak, and Marina. Then the third team would be Elena, Ilinka, and Pradeep. Then the next team would be Georgia, Jeremy, and Valera. And then the very last team would be Julio, Lina, Peggy, and Ty. It's a little bit of a bigger group. That one has one more person. Yes. So, thank you so much, Lais, for writing it down. in the comments. Amazing. Seems okay. So over the course of this course, you'll join together and share ideas and throw them together. So one of the first things that, you know, unfortunately, I think the film world has been changing a lot, and it's been moving to, because there's, or I mean, it's just a particularity of the field that there are so many projects that are being made that increasingly, as filmmakers, we have a difficulty in trying to attract people to our projects and to trying to find funds and to create them in a sustainable way. So one of the first things that you know, that we're working on right now is basically the very basic of pre-production order. Like, how do you start before you start? You know, by coming together and writing an idea as a team. So basically, you decide, you know, what form of film you want to say. I think it makes sense to start always with ideas, and then from ideas move on onto other forms of narration. So I think I'm going to share with you a tool that I think is really useful for brainstorming. I'm sure most of you know it, but Miro, I'll just share it with you. Screen. Give me a second. I'll share you my screen so that you can get an idea of. Wait. So wait. So for instance, I mean, this is kind of a. Are you seeing, which screen are you seeing right now? Wait.
Middle page, yeah.
Perfect. So this is what you're supposed to be looking at. So basically I use this, and I create all sorts of things in it, you know, to be able to you know, link stories. So I basically start, you know, by describing things that I want to see for this was for a graphic design and identity that we needed to create for a project, you know, bring similar things. So in this one, a lot of people collaborated to, because to create like the graphic image of this project. Wait, because I have wait, give me a second. Sorry, my computer got clunky. So basically, I encourage you to just create a Miro, and in the Miro, you know, each team will have, you know, will be creating their own stories. I think it makes sense that you write, you know, things, you know, in text, and then from there you move on to images in a later stage. And with this, together as a team, the best thing that you could do is to create a 3-minute pitch so that you can pitch the project to the class. This is something that we are always doing as filmmakers. We're always doing pitches of our projects, you know, in festivals, to journalists, to funds, and in the end, you know, it's although it doesn't seem related to filmmaking, it is one of the most important skills that you can do as a filmmaker. So I have a couple of basically really good tips for you to be able to do the pitches. The pitch, you know, next class we will do a short pitch. Everybody will pitch, you know, each team will pitch their project. So you have to choose one person to pitch it, because it's rare that more than one person pitches a project. So basically, a pitch is generally, or I think, you know, a pitch is generally structured in three different slots. So first, you want to have what we call a buy-in. So basically, images. We want to hear you describe things in images that we can relate to immediately. So basically, you try to bring, you know, concepts that may be abstract or situations that may be abstract into images, and then you will have us as your audience imagining them. In your pitch, you can mention things that are perhaps personal or that affect you. So it could be either, you know, what is your relationship to the project, which doesn't need to necessarily be autobiographical. It doesn't need to be a project about you, but it could be a project that affects you because you're dealing with an issue that you think is very important or that you think it's very timely. So we want to, because pitches are very, very short, you only have 3 minutes. We want to hear from you. So we want you to invite us to imagine things, and we want you also to explain why this is important for, you know, for us to listen to, and to be able to you know, to hopefully help you make your film. And in the end, you know, when you pitch and you pitch things, you not only become good at pitching, but you also become very good for fundraising and for applying for grants, which unfortunately is something nobody likes to do, but we all more or less do it all the time. So is it possible to share a good pitch example? Maybe yes, I do have some good pitch examples. I'll share them with you. I'll share them with you when I will have to look for them. But and generally a pitch that is 3 minutes is a page and a half, size 12, double space. So if you write it, then you know that's roughly how short it will be. Of course, a good pitch is not delivered, you know, reading it, you know, fails often to attract people because the way that you read and the way that you talk is quite different. We want to hear you talk. We want to hear you engage us. We want to hear you, you know, bring us in. So basically for next class, what you will do is, you know, during these weeks that we will not be seeing each other, we'll work together on, and I'll be available also, of course, on writing a synopsis for your project. And then when the synopsis is defined, and we get together the next time, the class will start with a short pitch section, and I will give you some feedback for the pitches. But I think that's the way that this will start. I have some tools so the pitch aside, that's kind of how it's going to be. If you want to share images, if you want to make a presentation, definitely go for it. It could help you memorize things and remember them so that it's visual. But mostly we want to hear you talking and we want to hear your words. I have made this folder. Wait, give me a second. I have made this folder that I know that you had, like I shared it with you, which is, you know, full of things. You know, there's some materials, there's tools. So this is one of the first things that I want to, you know, to get you on, and you can copy them and use them, edit them, what have you. So for instance, this is a script sample template. This is basically the same ones that we developed in forensic architecture, with very complex and you know, wide ranges of materials. So basically, it's here you would write, you know, the synopsis of your video, notes if you have any about the synopsis, and then it's basically cut out almost as a spreadsheet where you will have images. You can add images, voiceovers, descriptions, on-screen text, and editing notes. You can see one here that is full, you know, with the Vimeo links and all. And, you know, basically it tells you what these films are about. You can see some of the images. These are images from the archives. Basically here it's telling you that this is part 1, and you see this on screen. Then basically it's giving you the descriptions of what the things are. I have it here in 2 languages because I was editing in Spanish, but also, you know, most of the people working on it didn't speak Spanish, so I had to keep it, you know, simultaneously translated and so on. So of course I'm making use of archival material. There's a lot of animations, of course, so there's spaces for the animations and the voiceovers, right? So it seems, and generally, for instance, when you're working as a team and you have, you know, edited something, somebody another team member can tell you, hey, have you looked at 1.07? 1.07 needs, you know, some finesse, needs, you know, to change and this is also a very good way for collaborative editing, because of course you can add notes and so on, which always makes things a little bit simpler, no? And basically copy this format, copy this sample template, use it. It's a very, I mean, I found it very effective and very, you know, kind of intuitive. Georgia, you have your hands up.
So is this template for the pitch, or is this for the whole project?
No, this is for the project. So the pitch, you already, we will deal with it.
I think something I missed about the pitch is you said a good pitch has 3 parts. You said the buy-in, which is the images, and description, and then
Why are you interested in it?
why are you
Like,
interested in it?
why is, and then the last part is what do you need?
Okay, got it. Thank you.
So basically, if you're pitching in a, it's very different to do a pitch, for example, for a co-production forum than it is to do it for a finishing fund. So in a co-production forum, for basically, you have a film that you are looking for people to join in at an early stage. You want to convince them, that this project needs, somebody from Ukraine to join as a co-producer, because then you can maybe access different pools of resources or different storytelling. Or if you're doing it for a finishing fund, where you'll be basically asking for money for editing. So basically, what we need is 10,000 for for finishing the project. So this is kind of, yeah, what you need is important too, because it's a good way to close a pitch in that sense. And then basically, okay, so I'll go back to this. So you have the script template, which you'll definitely find, I think, useful. We have these contracts. These contracts, I made a folder full of contracts. It's a large PDF. If people give you behind the scenes authorization so that you can use their images behind the scene, or image releases. If you're working with children, you need a parental consent. Materials release for documentaries. So if somebody's lending you images or photographs or documents, you need a release from them. And basically all of this is so that none of you get sued at any point if you manage to distribute your things, widely or professionally. There's a composer agreement if you're wanting to work with a music composer and so on. Yes. So a synchronization license agreement, the original music versus the synchronization. Synchronization is different. It has to do with who records the music in terms of the agreement. So you have all of this. These are all tools that are generally useful to have. Keep them, use them if you want. It's generally phenomenally useful. I mean, definitely. And then I also have these breakdown sheets. These breakdown sheets are generally, these are for scripts like the one you just saw, but this is generally people use them more for fiction, in case when there's an art department and so on. But I wind up using them for documentaries as well quite often, because there's, sometimes when you have scenes that are very complex, or you need multiple characters to be in multiple spaces to be and interact with people or objects or things. Well, the sheets are quite useful. So basically, the way that I do that I do it is a little bit different to how people in standard basically fiction filmmaking use them. So what you have here in the breakdown is which number sheet is, this is incremental, so it goes from 1 to whatever you need. The title of your film, the day of your script, if this is relevant. If not, doesn't matter. I generally, because I work in documentaries, I put the actual date that I'm going to shoot it, because it keeps me in order, and it keeps me, knowing, when I film the different things. Scene number, I generally don't use this. I definitely use if it's interior or exterior, just so that I can have notes later on, for color. The location, I generally always write, the address, and if I have a contact number of the place where I'm filming, in case that I need permission later to be able to use it in the films and so on. Page count, basically with this, if you have a script, or if you have something like this, you can say that basically this whole block, which is 1.04, if you're all following me, 1.04 is basically 0.75 of a page, so it's 3/4 of a page. So basically in here, in here I would write 3/4. Basically, this gives me an idea of the length. How much will this last? If it lasts 3/4 of a page in the script, I have an idea of roughly what could this last in terms of the actual film. if it is in studio or if it's in location. This is just a cross. You know, I generally never film anything in studio. I have, but and a description of the scene, cast. This is really important. You know, who are the people who you're working with. If you're you know, and you put basically their names. If you need extras, if you need stunts, which, you know, sometimes you will. And basically, all of these things I generally don't need. Generally, props I do use. So I write breakdowns for props, and I keep folders and folders and folders full of these things that make my life easier. And generally, in my personal experience, the more organized you are, the more time you have for investigation or for doing creative work, which I think is generally, you know, a good guideline. Here in the, of course, you have the folder with the readings, which I think was shared with you, and I have some images. These two images are these films. These two films are quite different. These are films that I put for the first week. I will be uploading, you know, weekly, kind of, well, by each session, like a couple of films. The first film is a film by Jonathan Perel. It's an investigative film. And this film deals with Tucumán, which is a province in Argentina. And it's a project that I think, one of the projects that I've seen that uses archival imagery, satellite imagery, in a very, you know, tasteful, efficient way of storytelling without being overly didactic. Often when we are using filmmaking as a investigative method, we have the particularity that, you know, sometimes films can be quite heavily didactic and need narration to be able to share the investigation. So this is sort of the space that we are inhabiting right now. And so far, any questions, any comments, concerns, doubts?
I have actually one related to props. Do you mean like an object exported as an film production? Do you use it usually in documentary filming as well?
Yes, I use it in documentary filmmaking as well. Say, for example, I mean, of course, say, for example, somebody needs to have their phone because they're getting a phone call or they're getting a WhatsApp message. Then I generally list this as a prop because it has happened to me that I think, you know, somebody may need, you know, a phone, and then I go to the scene to film and, oh, I forgot the charger. And then these kind of things happen. And the more organized you are, the less chances you are that you will forget cables like me, and hopefully that it will, you know, or if you need a table, for instance, or if you're doing a situated testimony, like we will see a little bit later, you may need, you know, a screen, you may need a rod to point, you may need images that are printed, you know. Also, as props, sometimes you can, I generally put it under the VFX category, but digital assets, like, do I need a model of this pace or this pace? And generally, this keeps you a little bit on the loop, and it's quite helpful.
Perfect, thank you. There's always a rush at the moment of filming, like shooting, and then, oh my God, what is that?
And the least you have to worry when you're filming, the better, because the more you are able to focus on the scene. These are things that, you know, that you may or may not need for the specific projects that you're doing now, but I encourage you to keep them. I've had these forms for like 15 years and they keep working for me, and they have always, they don't prove superfluous even in any more questions that somebody may have? Okay, so I have how do we, what is the protocol of sharing images in videos in the new center?
We can stop filming, right? Recording, and then
or I send the link.
You can send the link in chat and
wait. Give me 1 second. I'm finding it here because I think, yeah, this may be the best way. I send the link in the chat, and then yeah, remember what we would do is we all turn our cameras off, and then when we return, we turn the camera on, okay? So that I know that you're back here. Basically, this is a film that I made, you know, in forensic architecture, as part of forensic architecture. dealing with testimony, with subject testimony, with the way that we encounter testimony. I think testimonies are one of the most fundamental ways, to gather information. Not only are they the fastest way to collect all forms of information, but they are generally quite, they have quite a strong emotional impact sometimes, and they can, bring you to this. So I will share this work on testimony that we've done, and we'll come back in 21 minutes. But yeah, turn your camera off, and then when you is this okay? Yeah. Hello, hello.
Hello.
Any questions, comments, doubts?
Tons of doubts.
That's
I
good.
have
Doubts are good.
I have a question about format of our video. You described this as being vertical, but you're showing us horizontal space. And this space was like a web banner space, which is an unusual size for a video. So do you care what we do in that? And does that influence what we can do for video editing? And it's really hard to share video editing. So your thoughts?
Well, I think, well, this one in particular was for installation in a museum, and basically we wanted to make a very large screen so that you would walk inside the space and you would be greeted by this kind of like phenomenological object, you know, which is the way that I was kind of working with it as a film. But you know, I was thinking that originally it would make sense to make the vertical films so they could be shared, you know, on social media, like and distributed in that kind of way. But I think, you know, regarding the current state of social media and the world, it's up for grabs. You know, where you pitch something and then we will go with what you pitch, but basically convince me otherwise. You know, yeah, I'm in a state where I'm basically starting to leave most social media channels for obvious reasons, political reasons. I have something else that I want to share with you. It's more than a specific thing. It's a you know, kind of like body of tools that you will definitely I imagine want to spend some time looking at. You'll find a lot of different things. Let me share my screen with you. Well, I'll share the screen, but I'll also share the link. So this is Bellingcat. Bellingcat, wait, this is not letting me. Bellingcat is one of those, where are you now? Well, anyways, I'll share this with you and I'll show you what it is, and then we'll go on from this. So Bellingcat is one of the first, you know, visual investigative agencies in the mode of forensic architecture. Just a couple of them now. You know, there's the New York Times Visual Investigations Office. The Guardian also has a visual investigations unit. Of course, there's forensic architecture. Until quite recently, there was also there was also, here's the link, I shared it with you. There was also a unit in Berlin, which I understand is in the process of closing due to, of course, political situations with Germany. There is a research office in Colombia, which I'm part of, and there is one in Mexico that is opening up. What we talk. So this is the Bellingcat is really great because what they do is that they organize you know, tools. They do a lot of training in open source investigation. Open source investigation is basically a form of investigation that deals with material that is available online, that is publicly available. A lot of times what we see online, or the material that we encounter online, sorry, is only the very, like, what you see is only the very tip of the iceberg. And once you start looking, and you start looking deeper and deeper and deeper, you will find all forms of information that could be useful for your investigation. So you will be able to find metadata, which will tell you which lens was a photograph taken with, and which this information you can calculate, you know, the distance between different subjects, thereby helping you understand, you know, where each person was actually at one given time and at one given moment. Sometimes people's cameras have, especially when they're taking with their phones, they have geolocations, they have timestamps, they have all sorts of information that, you know, could be useful in order to reconstruct, you know, events. As you read in the text that we were reading for this week, for forensic architecture, and the word forensic actually comes from presentations at the fori. So basically, different forums. So generally, the most thought of forum would be forums of law, it would be courts, it would be in these kind of situations, but also other forums exist for other types of projects. Not all of the work that forensic architecture does is intended for the courts, because a lot of it wouldn't have, jurisdiction to be investigated in, and would not have, an impact in the courts. So some of these projects are presented in art galleries, in museums, in public tribunals, like people's tribunals. They also exist in different spaces. A forum that is increasingly important is the internet, newspapers, and public opinion. So what you will find here is the Bellingcat investigative toolkit. It's very large. You will find that there is a lot of tools. They're separated here between categories. So map, satellites, geolocation, image, video, social media, people, websites, companies and finance, conflict, transport, environment, archiving, data organization, analysis. Some of the ones that may be more useful, for projects, video-wise would be, if you start going through them, maybe you will find that you would need metadata scrapers from videos. So you could find, metadata scrapers of all sorts. There's tools here that will tell you if images are fake or if images are real. If they're photographically produced, with optics, or if they're actually, synthetic and produced digitally. And all of these tools are generally quite effective. There's one that I generally use for images and video that is a reverse YouTube video search, where you would not look for a specific video, but you would find you would search for where the video was uploaded from. So for example, I'm not particularly looking for a video of a shooting in Louisiana at 3 p.m. So I would not be Googling 3 p.m. Louisiana. I would put the date, I would put a spot in the map and things that were uploaded around it. And then I would, manually have to go through all of the videos to see if there is something that interests me, that I could correlate with other things. I think one of the most useful ways that I see the process of verification, which is a lot of the things that we are always dealing with, is in the last century, truth has changed a lot, and and it's ongoing. Like working definitions of truth are constantly changing, and they've changed a lot. One of the main disciplines that deals with notions of truth is mathematics. Just to give you a short overview, in classical mathematics, the idea of true versus false, is a binary discourse. Things were either thought to be true, or a statement was thought to be true, or therefore, if it wasn't, it would be false. Contemporary mathematics, however, has offered us a great deal of new ways of thinking about truth. So basically, what happens is you take an object, and you could think of it maybe as a point cloud or something. You take an object, and like a mathematical object in this case, and you would look at it from different perspectives, from different sides, and then you would reintegrate it. So basically, in the process of bringing all of the different pieces together, you would watch this object come along. Some parts won't fit, which basically what it tells you is that not everything is true. Truth is multiple, truth is variable, truth is multi-perspectival, but not everything is true. There's things that will not fit inside of this reconstruction, this process. And the process of reconstruction in this kind of investigative techniques is what I like to think about as verification. So you look at one video from one perspective, you look at a photograph that seems to document the same event, and you try to bring in these two together to try to find where they mix and where where they really don't fit together. And in doing so, you will come a little bit closer to truth. So basically, truth is no longer true or false. It is a process. It is a process that is falsifiable, just like all science. All science is falsifiable. Science creates hypotheses that it then challenges and changes the way that we used to think about past events. So by definition, I think it is important that today we don't remain hopeless about the role of truth in media and information. And I think this next 4 years of the Donald Trump presidency will definitely be challenging, as they were in the past, with this post-truth, where people constantly say something until you have to basically believe that this is where these statements are actually correct. I think it's important to commit to practices that know that perhaps truth as a totality doesn't exist, but nevertheless we pursue it, and we pursue it with rigor, and we pursue it with discipline. And in doing so, we try, to find things. So all of these tools that you will find here are free. They're accessible. There's also a GitHub. For some of you that are more familiar with this, you could find some all forms of research things, like for Instagram, for instance. You can download images, you can find them. Yeah, I see that there's 2 hands up. So first it would be Antonio, if you wanna.
Just a quick comment on this truth thing. I think in the video it was nice when you were showing the guy that said it was not a plantana. It was it was a banana. I don't know. I don't remember which was which, but it was nice in the narrative, because then you present this alternative reconstitution of the facts, but you also show it that it's not infallible, and that you can, as you reconstruct, it's also liable to deviations of memory and so on. So I think it was like an honest, upfront account of what your own work. So yeah, just that.
No, totally. And I think, there's something that is to be said, right? That often as an investigator, you are in a position where you are in a distance. You are not, you're not a banana farmer, so you're not actually growing the bananas. Somebody who has the situated expert, like really real tangible knowledge of having to grow the plantains and having to size them so that they could be exported properly, will definitely always provide you with something you didn't expect. And for me, there's also a moment that was both humbling but also, I think, very important, because often when we arrive to places and we think that we know something in advance, we should be open to challenging them and to think, this thing that we thought was a plantain is just another banana, and for them this is not good. We have to actually to actually transform it, because and what happened later in the testimonies, of course, we spent some probably an hour modeling plantains so that they would look like proper plantains, because something like that already was conditioning his testimony. He was already in the process of not really feeling connected to it, because it what he saw represented didn't actually represent his expertise. And with a lot of things is like that. I'm in the process of conducting interviews with a Colombian judge that is exiled in Spain. And in these interviews, what always happens is that I interview her and I ask her about the space. And I find that because 30 years have passed, every time she describes the space, she never describes windows. And then I was very curious. She describes, meetings with generals. She describes, being threatened, by the Medellin cartel, etc. And of course, this is all very important. So we try to reconstruct, more or less the sites where things happen. But she never remembers windows. And I brought this up I asked her, why do you remember there was windows? And she couldn't remember if there was windows, if the spaces were totally locked down. I mean, there must have been windows in the spaces. So sometimes, you know, our memories and our recollections of events are also very heavily instructed by the way that we feel. So she felt, you know, she was being oppressed. She was being, you know, questioned by a general and threatened by the mafias. And if there was windows or not, well, she definitely didn't see a way out. So basically, it may not tell you necessarily the truth of the architecture, what the space was like, but it will tell you definitely basically an emotional truth of what she felt like. She felt that there was no way out. So in a sense, you know, it's also about trying to give things the twist, right? Like, do we want an archival connection, or do we want an emotional connection? Are we finding truth, or are we finding a connection? In this sense, this reminds me of I mean, this is a big jump, but it reminds me a lot of the Nuremberg trials. When the Nuremberg trials were being designed to prosecute German, well, Nazi war criminals, one of the chief investigators of this was Robert Jackson, and Robert Jackson was faced with a giant dilemma. The dilemma was do we use all of the archives that we've confiscated from the Nazis and all of the material evidence that we have, photographs of the concentration camps, etc., aerial imagery, you know, records from the government, or we use witness testimony? And he had this paradigm. Basically, he reasoned that if he didn't use witness testimony, which they didn't wind up using in the end, they settled for the archival material evidence version of the trials. The witness testimony would bring a lot of attention to the trials. It would bring a lot of emotional human impact. And in doing so, it would create, you know, a precedent that was mediatic and that was wide, so that people would connect with it. In going for the archival version that they had, which was like very hard evidence, when people were interviewed and interrogated based on this form of evidence, they knew that it would not be so attractive, that not so many people would join it or watch it, and it would not be reported as widely as, of course, was the intention. But on the other hand, at this time, they saw witness testimonies as fallible, as liable to manipulation, and they didn't want to create a trial that would be questioned. They wanted to create, you know, a bulletproof version, a bulletproof historical version through the processes of law, you know, created through the processes of law that would last, you know, generations. Of course, I have to say that one of the most complex ways of finding, of asserting truth is law. The law is basically, we seem to think of it always as something punitive, but more than anything punitive, law is designed if it works or not, right? Like, if it works or not. Of course, law has a lot of biases written into it, but law is a very powerful tool to construct truth. Different perspectives from different sides will be brought together, material evidences, testimonies, etc., and will be judged. There will be a judge that will be convinced if the events, you know, did take place in the way that they were supposed to take place, as claimed or not. And in doing so, you know, law creates forms of truth. So what happened with the Nuremberg trials is that they collected a massive amount of this material evidence, photographic documents, etc., that then were used basically for every single documentary film about the Holocaust, but also subsequent trials. In the 60s, when Mossad captured one of the last Nazi criminals that was hiding in, I think he was in Argentina, if I'm not wrong, which was Eichmann. They flew him and they trialed him in Jerusalem. This trial was a very different sort of trial because, you know, 20 years had gone past after the Second World War, and the role that these trials could have was different. So they definitely wanted to settle on some, they wanted to do something that was more mediatic and more of an exemplary kind of punishment. So when Eichmann was trialed, the court proceedings included a vast amount of testimonies of the Holocaust, traumatized victims that couldn't speak, all sorts of very emotive, fiery moments that you could, see in these trials. You can see them online. They're quite astonishing. And of course, many films have come out of it. There's this Eyal Sivan film that came a couple of years ago that's called The Specialist, which uses all of this trial, which we could call it a form of found footage, if you will, and edits it in a way that he questions another very important piece that came out of this trial, which was Hannah Arendt's Banality of Evil. So basically, he uses the same source that Hannah Arendt herself used to question Arendt's statements, and basically to portray Eichmann as somebody who actually was lying, very consciously lying during the testimonies that he gave, and that gave rise to a lot of Hannah Arendt's work. So it's very interesting. The film is The Specialist by Elias. So I read it here so that you can watch it. It's totally worth watching it. I see that Julio has his hand up. Sorry that it took me so long. I was
Yeah, sorry. It was actually a question for before when you mentioned this tool that can actually trace where the video comes from. What was that again?
It should be here. I mean, I'm not totally sure what it's called because I was using an old version of this, but I think it's the GeoFind one. Yeah, GeoFind. So you can,
thanks. Yeah.
You can find the location of YouTube videos, and all of these tools are really, really phenomenal. I encourage you, to go for them, try them, see if they work or not. Spend an afternoon with them. It's actually really fun, and I think it adds a lot to your investigation. There's tools also that can help you with facial recognitions. A little scary, but this is where it is. If you're not using it, the government is using it, and then if the government's not using it, somebody else is using it. So better use it yourself, so that you know at least what you're up to. Another one that I use a lot that I don't see here is the Google Earth Engine, not the maps. Yeah, this one, the Google Earth Pro and Google Earth Engine, which you can use to create all forms of map animations, and you can browse through times. Also, every government has generally tools that you can use to investigate satellite imagery. So, for example, in Spain, which in Spain, there is the Fototeca of the National Geographic Institute, which is really amazing. I mean, I use this all the time, for my investigations. You can see, images that were posted, you see the years, so you can move them. So, there's things that go all the way from the 40s, which were taken by the American governments, by the American government in a secret collaboration with the Franco regime, who they wouldn't talk to, supposedly. So you click basically, and you can find, all forms of tiles and all forms of images that then you can see. I think this kind of images, aerial images, are very useful in time comparison. For me, it's useful because, for instance, there was a graveyard in Calatayud. Actually, you know what? I'll show you right now. I'll show you how this kind of tools, how you could think perhaps a little bit about this kind of tools. So there's a graveyard here, if I'm not mistaken, yes, here. So I'm looking at an image from 1945, right? So I look for the graveyard, which should be, wait. This is pretty hands-on. I'm going as hands-on as I can. But it's just also, I think this is a good way to think about these tools, no? Like, so you see the graveyard here, right? Wait, This little square. Wait, I know that it exists in high resolution. Yeah, here it is. So basically, what is happening with this graveyard is that in this little square that you see that I'm pointing at right now, there used to be a mass grave where they put people that they executed during the first months of the Civil War. They throw them there as they disappeared them from their homes, and they threw them there and buried them. And then nobody ever was allowed to say anything about it. But something tells me that this is the actual spot. Because, I mean, nobody knows what the spot is, but something tells me this is the spot, and I'll show you how I came to this conclusion. Let's move to 68. Let's see if there's an image. There's no image in 68 from this one. Wait. 73. Let's see if in 1973 I can find this. This is probably going to be one. 73 or 80. Basically, what we wind up seeing is that this plot remains largely undisturbed through the years. It remains basically. Wait, I'm gonna click here and I'm gonna show you. And this is kind of how open investigations work. There is a lot of material online. You have to click, look, think. So you see the graveyard again, right? Wait. 1 second that it loads. So you see the graveyard again? So this part is new. They expanded this, and this is the plot that I showed you. You can see that by the shadows that there's no graves, there's no tombstone. So it's very strange that I mean, you have to use logic in this kind of situations, right? Like, it's very strange that a graveyard would spend money in expanding, in developing wider, and have a plot that is unused. Of course, you have to think, they would need to buy bricks, they would need probably an architect, they would need a license. So it's expensive to expand the graveyard. Why wouldn't they just develop this empty place of land? Somebody knew that there was something there, no? And then you go all the way to the present, and what you find is that suddenly this place is developed. So basically, the people, like the graveyard itself, didn't want to develop the. Wait, give me a second. I'm trying to find. Oh, very high resolution imagery now, because we're in 2006. So basically, it develops even further. I'm sorry for the internet. This is always like this, it's like playing around. So you see, it's not developed yet, but the graveyard has expanded even further, and there seems to be roofs, and there seems to be another place here. And if you look at it right now, like in contemporary images from the air, you'll find that this spot that was empty is now fully developed. This tells me basically in a very quiet and subtle way the story of what happened to this plot, which was people were buried there, as disappeared, in total silence. Nobody knew. The grave diggers knew, and probably the authorities knew, but the relatives didn't know. They were not told. There was no plaque. There was no form of acknowledgement that this place existed to bury the disappeared. Then the graveyard expanded around it because the town grew and people died. They had to be buried somewhere, so the graveyard grew. But this plot was kept as was. And this is all the way until 2009. What happens in 2009? Relatives find out that their missing ones were buried there. And they start demanding that the local municipality digs the graveyard to be able to identify them. And they start going to the municipality, protesting outside, writing letters, trying to get support from lawyers. And the municipality refuses starkly to carry out exhumations or to even build a monument. They refuse it because you have to think that Spain is very polarized. There's a large segment of the population that is very fascist, and they agree with Franco's dictatorship, which executed all of these people. So they didn't want to, this right-wing government from this municipality, they didn't want to do the exhumations, and actually didn't want the relatives of the exhumations. So there is some pressure, there is some here, there, and then in the end, they develop the cemetery, basically hindering any possible forensic investigation from the relatives. You know, you basically, when you are carrying out a forensic anthropology, exhumation, basically the way that it works is you take, especially in a mass grave, you take the people that you find, you separate the bones, the remains. I'm sorry, also, if anybody finds this triggering or disquieting, please raise your hand and I can shift. But so we're all in a safe space, because this could be potentially triggering or so on. But basically, you take the bones and you separate them by age, gender, coloration. So you try to like rebuild, people like this person is this one is this one, this one is this one. Why is this? Because it's very difficult to do DNA tests on most bones. Most bones don't have the necessary material to be able to do the tests. And also, DNA tests are actually quite expensive. So it's not desirable and it is not practical. So in a situation where you have a mass grave like this one, you will have a mingling. The bones will be mingled, and the work, of a forensic expert would be to detangle them. It will be in the process of detangling and individuation. When you have a graveyard like this, and then somebody decides that it's going to become again a graveyard, that they start burying new people on top of it, you have to think that graveyards really, they seem quite organized when you look at them from the outside, but most graveyards are actually very much like a Tetris. If you ask a grave digger, they will dig, and when they're going to bury somebody, and they will take things out that they find to be able to put the new people, and they will throw them to the general ossuary. Generally, all graveyards have general ossuaries for things that the grave diggers find while they're burying new people, so they basically kind of discard them. It's the reality of graveyards. So what we wound up happening to find here was that it's impossible to do an investigation anymore, because all of this spot was dug systematically, disorderly, sloppily. New bodies were introduced, and basically all of the contextual information that you could have had that could have helped you identify them and reconstruct, what happened to them is gone. Is gone intentionally. So this is the kind of things that in this case is a municipality doing it, but it's the same kind of things that criminals or do to hinder future forensic investigations and truth finding. So in the process of doing so, we wound up thinking, okay, wait, I'm gonna stop sharing my screen because I think you've had enough of this map of this graveyard. So you see, like, open investigations are one part the tools that you have, one part intuition, and another part talking to other people. Curiosity, wanting to interview people, wanting to read, from multiple sources. And in doing so, you will be able to construct more or less a picture of the events that you're interested in. So I encourage you, of course, to develop subjects for your films that you can investigate, that things that hopefully will challenge you, that you don't know entirely a priori. And in doing so, we'll start playing with these tools and challenging ourselves. In the next class, what we will do is we will work with non-optical image making. So a lot of things like how do you make forms of animations or screen recordings? We spend so much time on our screens, and how do we maybe use these for art pieces? I think all of these tools, even though I'm giving them to you in the context of forensic investigations, I'm actually using them in a lot of different contexts, in the context of art installations, architecture investigations, and of course forensic investigation. So you could actually, these are tools that you can use for whatever you want. Actually, when I was making a film in Mexico City about about a specific heritage place that is next to the airport. And there's one of the oldest chapels in Mexico City, and it was an important spiritual and ceremonial center. And I wanted to know if the place, what was the place like when the earthquake hit? Because there was an earthquake in 2017, 18, I think. And I was just not there at the moment, thankfully, because it would have been quite hard. And then I started doing the reverse, video search from YouTube, and I found out that somebody actually was inside of that building filming when the earthquake hit. And I contacted them, I asked them, hey, can I use this material for my film? Which was not really an investigative film, it was more like a visual ethnography of the place. And they allowed me to use it, and it was really quite a beautiful, piece of film that material that we found. So I definitely encourage you to do these kind of things. They're useful for all sorts of things and all sorts of projects. I also have another, it's a Google Sheets that I want to share with you. It's a review template thing that I'm going to share. Wait, it's in the, I'm going to share this. Yeah. So this is something that I use to review testimonies. I think it's in the link, no? Oh, wait. I'm going to copy the link. I shared it. I have it open so that I share with everybody. And this is what I call a testimony review template. I mean, I filled things here, but you can empty it and do with it whatever you want. It's especially useful for me when I have very large swaths of information, like very heavy interviews with witnesses of things and what have you, that is important. So I keep, time code in, time code out. So basically what I would notate here is what the person is saying. So he's asked his name is Crescencio Jimenez or what have you. He basically describes what he sees, no? And then what I do here is if he mentions a date in his test or this one that you see here is a testimony that I did with this person that's called Crescencio Jimenez. But if whoever you interview mentions a date, you write it because it could be useful for you to cross-reference and to do verification, so that you know when, like, if things took place in the same time, in the same space, in the same year, month, whatever. And I have themes here. I located them through locations, and I made a little drop-down menu that you can just go into the directory and change them for whatever you need. The names, because this was a victim of a witness of the Spanish Civil War. He was 10 years old, but he remembered all of the people that he saw executed in the graveyard that I just showed you. So basically, every single name that he would mention, I would write down. And this was extremely, extremely, extremely useful for us because a lot of other interviews, we started finding correlations. Oh, Padre Villar. So I would go back and see Padre Villar. Okay, fine. So he mentions this at minute 1. And then I would go to another interview that mentions it, and I would start building a more complete picture of this. If you need any additional information, or if this person that you interview mentions a specific site or a location. So I would add, just the coordinates if I have them, and if not, I would just write it in the notes of additional information. And generally in the gray, I write the file name. So this is just the file name. And I think this could be, this has been really useful for me to manage this kind of like large swaths of information. Again, it's all tools. I'm just trying to share all of these tools for you. You can choose them for whatever you want. How many things can you do with a hammer? No. So yeah, I think this last part of the class that we have like 30 minutes. I think it would be good that we open, the conversation to all of you, and we think, of ways to move, specific questions that you may have or things that you may need guidance with at this moment. Again, next class, what I think would be really useful is that we do the pitches. So, each team pitches the film, 3 minutes. and writes, of course, a synopsis of the film that you are, or the visual investigation that you are desiring to carry out. So this is for the next session, and yeah. So here we are going. Anybody have any questions, comments, concerns? So for instance, I'll tell you more about this crazy project that you are seeing here. This is a film that I'm currently that I've been working on for 7 years, believe it or not. It's kind of insane. And this film has not only, of course, a filmic component, but it has a very heavy open investigation side to it. Wait, give me 1 second. I'm looking for a specific part that I want to share with you. So yeah. So we were working with the burial logbook of El Valle de los Caídos, which is this colossal place outside of Madrid. So basically, half an hour outside from Madrid, Francisco Franco decided to build a mausoleum for himself. And he also had the macabre idea to bury 33,847 people there. We don't know who 12,000 of these people are. They're literally people who have disappeared, who Franco himself disappeared, well, his government and his army. And then 20 years after the war, they dug them up and moved them to be buried with, the person that executed them, which, as you can imagine, has brought tremendous pain to the relatives. Most of the relatives only found this out in 2008, 2009, and some of them are still finding that the relatives are buried there. Why is this? This is because the data is very messy. It's hard to access. It's almost unreadable. And basically, a part of the kind of political work that I've been carrying out together with an association here in Madrid has been to make this data public, accessible, and digitized. This has taken a tremendous effort because, wait, give me a second. Because some of the things that have happened, wait, I'm sharing my screen with you again. Because if you look at basically, if you see this big stack, this is the burial logbook that I printed and I scanned. Each page has, 30 something registries of people that are buried there. And they're all written kind of like in monk calligraphy. So we started trying to digitize them one by one. It's 33,000 entries. This didn't seem to be, doing anything. It seemed impossible. It seemed to be taking forever, especially because, the cursive that it was written in was extremely difficult. So we decided to outsource it, or maybe to open this process up to a public. We started working with, well, I started working with people who work in machine vision, trying to train AI to read this. Impossible. It would just not get us anywhere, especially not with the precision that we wanted. So we found out actually that the best way was to use actual human intelligence to read this. So basically, we created the sessions where, well, I show you here, wait. Can you see? Yeah. So basically, in the sessions, what we did is that we created this setup where people would read the names. So they would read them, read the names, and then the transcription of the names would be transcribed. And if somebody, and we created a protocol around it. So for example, its name is accompanied with a number, the number of burial, and it's growing, it's in incremental order. So you would read the number and then the name. And then if you didn't, if you made a mistake, you would say the number again. So we would identify duplicate entries and basically remove the noise from the platform. And then what we also did was, if somebody would say something, sorry, if somebody would read the names and they could not actually say the name, like they understand what they were saying, they would have to say illegible. And then when we see that the AI brings us something that says illegible, we'll look at it, and then we'll take some time and do it by hand. So basically, yes, we were in this theater doing this recently, and basically this is kind of what it looks like. Sorry for the color, it's not color, the sound is. Illegible, so you see it's illegible. Yeah, so this was what winds up happening in this case is that what we thought was a process of like the investigators, in our offices transcribing things became a public event. So we would have people reading for spaces of 45 minutes, and they were reading, like we had many days, like it was one day a week for a long time. In total, it was 72 hours. So you can imagine how many people read. We basically everybody in the team, it was 5 people in the team at that moment. We all run out of friends to invite. It became a very public thing. People would go, people would read. Often people would cry. People would be very affected by this process. By the process of reading the names of unknown people, mostly, especially people who have worked with disappearance. It was very affecting and very intense for them. So a lot of people were crying, were very moved by this. So this is one way, again, of doing open source investigation, and what like creative outputs that you could do. It's not only you are telling truth, you're opening it up to a sort of like performative public kind of audience, and in doing so you create different dynamics around the content that you are investigating. Another thing that we wound up doing later is we created together with a mathematician, we created we created a mathematical model that would tell us hypothetically where in the space all of the people buried were. So basically you would input a number and it would tell you what the hypotheses were. So if you see, like, it starts like the numbers move and then the locations move. We knew that this was not truth. Like, this is not necessarily where they are. This is where mathematically it's more likely that they are. So we had a lot of philosophical discussions about this. Like, how do we present something to the relatives? Explain the process, explain the fallibilities of the process, but also tell them that that we've paid attention to their request and that we did to their demands and that we did everything in our power to be able to meet them. So one of the most obvious ways that we concluded was that, of course, we cannot present one hypothesis, even though there is one that is more likely than the others. If you present 3 hypotheses, you already understand that this is in a possibility of truth, that this is not, this is where it is, this is where your relative is, this is the scope of where this person may be in the space if a certain logic is followed. Again, intuition is the main element of investigations. I think intuition is everything. One of the main surprises that we had when we started working with a mathematician in this project was that he told us, no, you don't have to think about this abstractly. Like, the first thing that we have to do is we start moving boxes. So we gathered a team of like 4 people and we started moving boxes the size of the coffins that were designed by the architect to see how we would move in space. Things that are obvious to us because we have bodies, are not so obvious, abstractly. So, you cannot put boxes from up to down. You have to put boxes from down to up. And if they are coffins, you don't want to walk on top of them. So you put a row, then you put a row, and then you move further and further because you don't want to walk on top of any boxes. So there's this kind of logics that start taking place, and one of the most beautiful moments that we had, with working with this mathematician, with this topologist, was, thinking about our bodies, like filming ourselves moving boxes, thinking, intuitively. And in doing so, we wound up, coming, I think, much closer than we would have had he not arrived, because first we were calculating everything in blueprints, basically as architects. And this was totally actually counterintuitive to what we wound up finding. So I think it's good to always keep thinking, like, okay, so like, what is the problem that I have? What does logic tell me, and what does intuition tell me? And often you find that it's different, and you find interesting things that come in the middle. I like to think of this form of investigation as, generally when you have an analytic perspective to investigation, analysis implies that you take every piece and you take something and you break it apart into pieces and you analyze every single piece. And it breaks down. It's about breaking things into its constituent elements. With this kind of investigation, I think I'm aiming for something quite different. And this is a very personal project, but I'm aiming for something quite different. I'm aiming to basically, you take a knot, you think of it as a knot. Maybe this is a useful metaphor. And instead of cracking it with a hammer, you submerge it in a acid that breaks away the shell. Basically, what I'm trying to do is to be able to find what actually took place in this project. What I'm doing is that I'm submersing this crime and this element in the widest context possible by enriching it with all of the context that I can. Where this took place, when did it take place, what are the relatives' take on it, what are the archives that are available. I'm trying to bring everything back. I'm trying to reconstitute, this past event as closely as I can, given, of course, that 80 years have passed and it's no longer possible. And I know this and I acknowledge this. So this is kind of, this is how it's going. Bless you, Georgia. Does anybody have any questions or? Georgia.
No, sorry, this is just a bit administrative, but just to be sure, so the to-do for next week is a 3-minute pitch prepared in our groups, presented by one person.
Yes.
And we'll meet outside the class to organize that, yeah? Yes.
Yes,
Okay.
totally. And I think it's useful that you write it together, that you brainstorm it together. Of course, it's going to be outside of class. As you see, these classes don't take place on a regular basis. They have quite some space in between. It's because films take time, and investigations take time, and collaborations take time. So basically, I'm trying to work it out so that you have the most time that you can for these projects between yourselves and.
Oh, I thought it was every week.
No,
what are
no,
the days,
it's
or
not.
it's just something I've missed?
No, it's not every week.
It's every other week, I think.
Yeah, and then but except for the last week, which has some more space between the last week, because I think you'll need some time to actually produce the films. And I'll be available. You write me emails. I'm generally quite fast at answering emails. And if you need to talk to me, write to me, and we can talk. I'm happy to help you through processes. And if you have doubts or if you have administrative things, reach out to me. And I'm actually really this is one of my favorite things. So I'm excited for it. Andrej.
Yes, I have a question. I think thank you so much for everything that you showed, actually. I think it might be interesting for some of us to some of us already know each other a little bit, and I think it might be interesting to I'm not sure if I'm the only one who feels like this, but maybe we could reorganize the groups a little bit more about shared interests and topics, and I think like try to keep this kind of mix of disciplines. And I'm not sure like if this is something that's easy to organize. I don't know, like in a Google Doc or something, and not like, yeah, not to make it too complicated, but I was just wondering if other people would also like to maybe find common ground so that the collaboration is really fruitful, or like just, yeah, I don't know, like I feel like it can also be super interesting to be in a random mix with random backgrounds and random interests. But yeah, I don't know how you guys feel about this.
I feel, yeah, I think we can do this. Yeah, and especially if people know each other already, I'm happy to that. Savi, are you able to coordinate this in a Google? I mean, we can keep the groups as they are, but if and
Yes,
change things around. So this is like a base, and then from this base we can
of course,
move things
yeah,
around.
totally. Or like maybe in the process, or this is a suggestion, like if any one of you has like has a more intelligent suggestion, please come up with it. But maybe just to, in that group section, people just start writing
Yeah, let's
some
do this.
intuitions, like I want to make a film about, I don't know.
I just
And then
create
like,
Sorry.
I just create a doc with the teams, and I think we can rearrange the groups.
Perfect. Yeah, let's do that. So thank you so much. So yeah, let's create a doc, and from there we can rearrange based on interests and so on. I think the mix of disciplines is important, because I think you'll have some surprises from these interdisciplinary collaborations. People see things differently, and I think it's a good space to.
yeah, I guess this is why we're here now. I mean,
Exactly.
this is the amazing
That's
thing
really
about this format.
perfect. So you have. Thank you so much, Avi. This was really quick. And yeah, so yeah, right. Edited and right. Also, I think when we come into more the actual production phases of this, we'll find new ways. In terms of the materials, there's 2 films that are on the folder. You can watch them if you want. I mean, I encourage you to watch them, of course, otherwise I wouldn't put them there. It's 2 different approaches, very, very different approaches. One of them is by Jonathan Perel, which is a very investigative piece on Tucumán as it was founded, and Tucumán as it is today. Watch it. It's really, I think it's a really, really fascinating, beautiful documentary. And the other is a short film called Incident by a Bank by Ruben Östlund. Ruben Östlund is more known for his kind of funny fiction films, but this is one of his first films, and I think it's the best one. It's this incident that he witnessed one day when he was going to the bank, where people robbed the bank, and then he used this experience of having witnessed this to create, this short film about it, where the camera doesn't move, because he recalls, being in one space and not knowing what was going on and being kind of scared, so he didn't move too much. And it's with actors, it's with cinematographers, etc. But I still think it's a documentary. And I think these lines between documentary and film and fictions or whatever, I think they're not useful anymore. So yeah, let's break it all. Let's break it all down. Sometimes you need some actors to be able to make your documentaries, and sometimes you need props and wardrobe and what have you. I see, Peggy, you have your hand up.
I thought that the incident at the bank was very, very funny, but I think beyond our ability to do as a group over this what limited capabilities we have. I mean, and it had a real point of view. Does that not bother you if we took that strong of a point of view?
No, I think it's good to have a point of view. I think there is no such thing as being what do you call it, unbiased spectator anymore. I think this sort of like unbiased, like really openly unbiased filmmaking is something that we should in a way challenge. You know, everybody has their own perspective, and there's a lot of truth to things that seem that there's, you know, filmmaker Luis Ospina had this beautiful saying that was very foundational to me. He said that documentaries are lies on the surface of truth, whereas there is a lot of truth in fiction filmmaking. You know, the truth of the person that wrote it, the truth that the actors feel, the truth that the directors feel, etc. So let's think about it. You know, what does it mean to use all of these lies in the surface of truth, which is what he described documentaries as. I think it's quite an interesting, you know, ethical position to take. No, Kalak, you have your hand up. Kalak?
Yeah. No, just do you have any recommendations about what makes a good subject? Well, how to pick up a subject? Can it be really broad or specific, or it should be more specific? I don't know, any thoughts on that? What makes a good subject for a film like that?
This sounds silly. I do have some answers for you. It sounds silly, but generally try to choose an object that you want to be bored with, and I mean it big time, because say I've been making this film for 7 years. If it's a subject that I'm bored with, I'm gonna be bored at year 1, and I have 6 more to go. So it's important. It's important to always choose something that you find, you know, stimulating, and that you can learn more from, that can keep you interested. You know, something that keeps you up at night would be a good subject. You know, something that worries you, that you know, when you read your newspaper in your phone, you're like, holy shit, what the fuck is this? I'm upset. That's a good subject, probably, if it doesn't bore you. You know, try to choose something that affects you, that you can, maybe it's not about you, maybe it's about something far away. Maybe something that really affects you is carbon dioxide, and you want to make a documentary on carbon dioxide, or on graphene or silica. You know, all of these things you could make great documentaries about silica. Imagine you could, you know, go from the molecular structure on a molecular level, the origins of life, the semiconductor war going between China and Taiwan. You could, you know, you could transverse different scales. You could go from the micro to the macro. I think the scale is not super important, in the sense that your films are vehicles to navigate between different scales. You could always keep at one single scale as well if you want.
Do you have any advice perhaps for like what tends to work in a more simple capacity with this sort of thing? Because I feel like we could get really like drowned by trying to start a project that's far too ambitious for this scale. So like, is it like working with, I don't know, satellite imagery tends to like be easier? Like, is there anything you've learned from working on this to yourself about like what to avoid, what's more complex and what's less complex?
Yeah, I think, you know, what I would avoid, you know, for time reasons, would be more complicated witnessing techniques, like situated testimonies, because you would need to model things and then interview people with it in a very specific setup. I'm not saying you can't. I mean, I'm sure, you know, the architects in the cohort would be people to search for in this kind of particular situations. But also, you know, for this kind of projects, what could make sense is not necessarily like very sophisticated 3D reconstruction, but, you know, asking somebody, you know, if they know where the windows were, or if they know how high the ceiling was. so that you would know if they felt trapped or if they felt uncomfortable, how long were they in a space, for instance, if you're doing interviews. So I think those take time. I think, generally speaking, it's good that you have teams that have different abilities so that you can really push towards different ways of saying a specific subject. It's good also that, it's going to require some consensus, deciding what the films are, what the subjects are, between all of you, which is generally what we're always doing. No, we're always trying to find, what we make projects on. And generally, I think the tools that you choose will be decided by the subject and by the requirements of your project. So if you're making a project about how much water do pools in California use, you will definitely need to use some satellite imagery, because you'll need to look how many pools there are and calculate, an average volumetric, amount of water that they take. For instance, I'm just saying something off the top of my head. No? So basically it would give you the tools that you would need, but maybe you will not be needing to look for YouTube videos. So I think, each tool will answer different needs that you may have. Yeah, and I encourage you to, if you want to make things personal and have a first, a first person narrator, do it. If you want to have a narrator that is like very scientific and like seems unbiased, by all means go for it. But definitely try to choose subjects that interest you and that steer you and that perhaps is something that you don't know about, but you've always kind of wanted to know about, and this is a good chance.
Are there any examples, just by chance, that you can think of that utilize some of these techniques but are very simple, that like seem to you like, oh, you could do this in a weekend, or you could do this like you could actually make a little like cell phone social media reel or something and just bust it out using something like this, like just as a framework to work from?
I mean, I have to think about it. Not of the, off the top of my head. Of course, there's a lot of things that you could. There's investigations that forensic architecture has done in a week, for instance. No, I think, another way that you could do it is that you could do something that is very locked. So you have people, so you decide, okay, so this film is about this, and it takes place. So basically, this film is about the price of Ethereum from 2 p.m. to 10 a.m. and people in this forum, what they say. So you monitor the forum for whatever, 12 hours. And then in those 12 hours, you find ways to do screen grabs, and then you find ways to illustrate it. So you could do things that are, we say in Spanish, acotado, that are kind of like locked off, that are, buried between time and space. And then from there, you can find ways to illustrate it or to grow it. I think creating a very well set of limitations is very useful for this kind of project.
Yeah.
Basically what you could do is you could write like a little manifesto, like for each piece, like this happens from here to here, and I only show this kind of things. Nothing else is allowed. And then by creating these limits, you wind up finding ways to enforce different creative outputs. So yeah, I think this is. I see, Valera, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I think like you said most of the stuff that I wanted to add. But yeah, in the conversation about the scale, like talking about the scale of the projects, I think like from my experience, it like if you would choose something like shorter reactionary media to work with topic that really tied to something like current, or how you said, like locked in time and space, and not going like megalomanic. So this like short work, it could be pretext to bigger work if you will feel that you're like ready to marry this team for a couple of months or years or something like that. So and take in consideration how your medium will always age, because I think we all experience this like stuff that didn't age well, as we thought. And just the small remark about the group arrangement, like I don't know anybody, and I would love to like know you better. And like so far, I'm excited about the arrangement that we have, and can imagine directions that we can took as a group with Jeremy and Georgia. So just if there will be some change, let me know, and we'll adjust. Yeah, thanks. And thank you. Like,
Amazing.
that's
No,
very
you're
interesting.
welcome. It's amazing. And I'm looking forward. Let's think of this, for instance. This sounds kind of out there, but bear with me for a second. I want to make a documentary about cars. I'm interested in cars, where they go, where they come from, their models, where were they produced, who designed them. But I'm making this documentary about cars only with open source material that I find on the internet. And all of the open source material that I will be using will be from Gaza from 2023 to 2024. All of the images of cars from the documentary will proceed from there. So all of a sudden you have a subject that is very limited. I'm making a documentary about cars, but this documentary about cars is only using open source material from Gaza. So basically I will be talking about, basically a Chevrolet car, whatever, that I see in an image, an open source image that I found of, some of the destruction that is going around. And then I will be narrating about this car. Oh, this car is produced in a factory in Lebanon, and it's designed in America. And in this kind of things, you could go from something very specific in a very strange context, very limited context, and you could tell, some of the history of the war, the history of sanctions, the history of, destruction, even though you're not even actually saying it. So it's also like this kind of limitations that I encourage you to adopt, will open a lot of very interesting creative routes for you. I see Jeremy, you have your hand up, and then we are basically closing for last question.
Yeah. I'm just wondering like how we can contact people within our groups, and if we could like maybe everyone add their contact info to this doc, or if it's in another place so we can just be in touch.
I may put the news center email from everyone in the docs, so you can mail yourself.
There's also the Discord group, no?
Yes.
I think that's a good one. I think it's good to use the Discord group for this, and then you can create, your own groups. And if you in your group decide that you don't like Discord and that you prefer WhatsApp, go WhatsApp, or whatever. But yeah, definitely the news center emails and the Discord, and then it's a great question. Thank you, Jeremy, for reminding us of this. Anything else? Okay, so well, I'll see you in the next session. I'm looking forward, and of course, I'll write my email here. You already have it, but here's my email. If you need, I put it in the doc of the groups. If you need me for anything, or if you have questions, write to me, and I'm happy to get back and think together with you through different things. Okay.
Great. Thank you so much. See you
Thank
in a couple
you.
of weeks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very exciting.
Thanks.
Very nice to meet you all.